it's probably the hardest fern to take care of. Let's talk about Adiantum. What's up, fellow plant enthusiasts? My name is Dylan and this is Bain's Botanicals. Today we're going to be talking about Adiantum, also known as the maidenhair fern. And maidenhair ferns are beautiful. They are referred to as maidenhair ferns because their fronds, like the leaflets on their fronds, look a lot like the leaves of a maidenhair tree, which is the ginkgo biloba. And ginkgo biloba is unique in the fact that it is the only plant, the only tree that has leaves like that, because all of the other trees like that went extinct millions of years ago. But that's for another video. Anyway, maidenhair fern, beautiful plant, but extremely difficult to keep alive, unless you are just an expert with terrariums, because that is where a plant like this belongs. Now, before we get any further, let's go ahead and do this. Here is the taxonomy information for Adiantum. Now, since this is a fern, we are not in the phylum Magnoliophyta. We are in the phylum Polypodiophyta, which is the ferns. Adiantum in particular is in the family Terrarium. Now, Polypodiophyta is a very old phylum of plants. The ferns came right after basically the lowest level of plants, which would have been like the mosses, the hornworts, the liverworts. After that, then you have ferns, which do have a vascular system, but they are seedless. They reproduce via spores, which, without getting too complicated, is kind of a version of cloning itself. They do not make seeds. They do not make flowers. They are very, very old. I want to say like 500 million years, like Devonian era, I think. But yeah. So as far as, oh, look at that. It's getting a new little fiddlehead on it. I don't know if you guys can see that on my cheek now. As far as care goes, these need kind of medium light. Bright light is more likely to stress them out. When we think about where ferns grow, they grow in the bottom of the forest where it's nice and humid and moist. Sorry, Christian. And it's not very well lit. They get dappled sunlight at the bottom of the forest floor. So think about that when you're giving it the appropriate amount of light. You don't want to stick this in a sunny window. You don't want to stick this under a grow light that's like right here, because it's going to burn it. As far as water goes, that's one of two reasons that this is so hard to take care of. These need to be kept consistently moist all the time. Now, that's not sopping wet. That's a different thing. When I say consistently moist, I mean after maybe 3 or 4 days, depending on the size of the plant, if you start to notice that your dirt is getting just the least bit kind of powdery, you might want to go ahead and just hit it with water again. Just because, again, at the bottom of the forest floor, it doesn't really dry out. It stays wet. Not sopping wet. Again, that's the tricky part. That's the balance. It can't be sopping wet because it'll still rot, right? But it can't really dry out either, ever. If it dries out, you're going to start to see damage to the leaves. And I've seen this at the retail setting where these will come in, and if the soil dries out even like halfway, you'll start to see browning. So just something to kind of take into consideration. They don't like to be watered with tap water either very much, because these leaves are so dainty. I mean, if we look at how paper thin these leaves are, that tells me that they're not going to stand up super well to some of the heavier minerals and things that come in tap water. So if possible, try to water it with like filtered water, distilled water, something that's not going to have all of that extra harshness to it. As far as soil goes, I have it in a regular houseplant soil, which usually does just fine. These are good ones to keep in plastic pots, ceramic pots, anything that will help retain more of that moisture. Now, this is not something I would put in a terracotta pot. As much as I love terracotta pots, I know that ferns don't belong in them. Humidity, is that what we're ready for? Let's do fertilizing first. Ferns can be a little sensitive to fertilizers. So if you are fertilizing, just do like a regular houseplant fertilizer, but maybe dilute it a little bit more because you don't want to burn the delicate foliage. And I fertilize during the growing season only. So the dormant season, which is like late fall, winter, early spring, I just stop fertilizing altogether. It's good to give your plants a rest, and since there's going to be less light anyway and potentially some variable temperatures, plants just like to take a break because they're not photosynthesizing as much. So if they're not photosynthesizing as much, they don't need as much of the nutrients from fertilizer. Now, back to humidity. These need humidity. And when I say they need humidity, they need to be in a terrarium. This isn't really a plant that you can just mist and it'll be fine. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it just, they need that enclosed humidity because of their delicate foliage. All ferns need supplemental humidity, realistically. But this one is one that just, it needs to be enclosed in something, whether that's a cloche or some sort of like mini, like maybe not a vivarium, but like a miniature enclosure of some sort, to where you're blocking off whether it's heat or like just the movement of air, anything that's going to suck the humidity out of these leaves. You want to protect it from that. Even this one, I'm trying to take good care of this one. I really just bought it for this video. I am going to stick it in a little kind of, it's kind of a more for a candle, but it's a glass kind of enclosure that has a little opening at the top, and I'm going to put this in it and hope for the best. Now, these ferns will get big. I mean, I've seen maidenhair ferns get pretty large. They weren't like that in somebody's house, I can tell you that. They were in a greenhouse, and I imagine that they weren't there for too long, as far as they had probably just brought those off of the truck recently. But yeah, maidenhair ferns are more expert level houseplants, but nevertheless, they are good to talk about. They're really beautiful, great to look at, and something that if you find one like this, and I got this at Walmart for $5, you know, it's something that you should try. Really challenge yourself to be more attentive as a plant parent, because this is the one. This is one of the ones that you really have to pay attention to. Other plants that are similar to this in difficulty, other than other ferns, I mean, there are some easy ferns, like asplenium, like the bird's nest fern. It's pretty easy. But other things besides ferns would be like Ficus pumila. Ficus pumila really needs to be moist all the time, and it needs supplemental humidity. It's maybe not as much of a terrarium plant. I have a Ficus pumila outside of a terrarium, and I do baby it quite a bit, so it's not in a terrarium, but those are also thicker leaves too. What else is this kind of difficult? Carnivorous plants. And of course, if you're a specialist in carnivorous plants, you're going to say, well, you know, they're not that bad, but they are a different beast to tackle. You can't be successful with carnivorous plants in the same way as you are successful with a philodendron or an epipremnum or something that is very, very easy. But yeah, I don't have a lot else to say about Adiantum. It's just, I'm just looking at it and I'm just kind of mesmerized by the beauty of it. And it just makes you think of like a lush, maybe forest floor or like a lush tropical area. And it's just gorgeous. But let me know what your experience is with the maidenhair fern. If you guys have some tricks up your sleeves, please share them in the comments, because a lot of people read your guys' comments and I guarantee you're helping somebody by contributing. So I can imagine that a lot of you are going to say, yes, I had one and I didn't have it very long. But nevertheless, they are amazing. Thank you guys so much for everything, for your contributions, and for your likes and subscribes, and especially for your comments. And I love learning from you guys. I love being here as a resource for you guys, and it's so meaningful and important to me. So thank you. Until the next video, I will see you guys very soon. Thank you.